Thank you for joining us. Today's guest is Mr. Brad Durham. Brad writes the BD Newsletter and Introspection of McMinnville. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, glad that you kind of contacted us about this because we want to get a lot of interest. I mean, you've got some interesting content on the newsletter, and this introspection I think is going to be very interesting. But first, tell us about yourself and how you got started with the newsletter.
I was born in McMinnville. Dr. Smoot delivered me down at the clinic. I go way back to the 50s, and I grew up in a radio family. My dad and uncle worked at radio here in town and in college, and my dad owned WAKI for a number of years. I went away to high school in Massachusetts. I graduated from Vanderbilt. Then I went to Los Angeles and worked in the music industry for a few years. And then I went to Boston for 10 years, and I volunteered and worked directly with the homeless. Mm-hmm. And I came back, I believe in 1992, to work with my dad at his radio station. And for past 23 years, I've been fundraising with high school athletic teams in schools across the state.
Mm-hmm. So what gave you the idea of starting a newsletter? And of course, it's an online thing, so people can read it at their own leisure. But what gave you that idea that we need that?
Yeah, it's free and it's on demand.
Uh-huh.
It's all there,
right?
Archived. Several years ago, I did a short documentary film, and I enjoyed interviewing people and researching. And a couple of years ago, a friend from college who's a filmmaker came to town, and we were discussing trying to do a documentary about sports, something sports related. But as we talked to people, it became more evident that the real story is McMinnville itself. And I came to believe that if you could do a documentary, like an introspection of McMinnville by McMinnvillians, I can't say that very quickly.
That is a mouthful.
Yes, but people would see each other and understand how much they have in common, and maybe we would not be as divisive and mm-hmm. a little bit more understanding and respectful of each other's opinions, mm-hmm. which in these times seems to be pretty challenging.
Well, I know even, you think of this on a large scale, but even in a small town, you have ideas about people and you have ideas about the way they think. And this is a lot of times on, any level, political or whatever. But when you really sit down and you talk to them and give them a chance to tell how they feel about things or what shapes their ideas about that, that's something we normally don't get.
Right. I think historically and culturally, we used to. I mean, I think that McMinnville used to gather. I mean, you can see things where it went on downtown, and downtown was full on Saturdays, and people gathered, and I think churches and all kinds of community things, there was more participation, but that's just not McMinnville. Mm-hmm. That's America. Mm-hmm. And I think people have not only moved geographically to be with people that they are more like-minded with, mm-hmm. we're shifted existentially and philosophically, spiritually, to people that we identify with, and somehow we're just reinforcing ourselves. It's like being in an echo chamber, they say. Uh-huh. And so you get more and more into your point of view and identifying with your, quote, group.
Right. But that could be limiting.
Yeah, it comes limiting, and it seems that it can become adversarial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with so many people moving to this area, moving to Tennessee, mm-hmm. Some people love it, some people don't love it so much, but they're people too with their own thoughts and ideas and love things that we love, whether it's the nature here or
Right.
anything like that. There are things that we have in common. So the introspection series, is that something you had been planning for a while, to talk, to get in depth with? I think you did 12 different personalities in McMinnville.
I did. I thought an introspection, not from just one person's point of view, but from a cross section of people. And I interviewed, I think, a good cross section of people. And it's a laborious process and time consuming. And I would love to interview more people, but it's not my full time job. It's not
Right.
even a job, but it's very time consuming. But I interviewed people that I didn't know, and after I got through talking with them, I understood their point of view better, and I would say I genuinely liked everybody I talked to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about that. How did you choose the 12 people that you did choose? What brought you to these people?
Well,
And you
either-
can name names who all these people
well,
are.
the people are, and I don't want to name them. There's, and I'm pretty sure that most people would know their titles. And I had a list with everybody who's on there, but I don't want to forget them. But it's Terry Bell, County Executive, Dr. Brian Chastain, Mandy Eller, who used to be with the Chamber, and then there's a young woman, Judith Gomez. And alphabetically, I'm trying to stay alphabetically.
Well-
but there's, go down the list, Jimmy Haley, former mayor, county executive, Todd Herzog, Tony Lawrence, minister at Bybee Branch Church of Christ. Or
Yes.
That's not exactly how it's Bybee Branch
At the Church of Christ at Bybee Branch.
Yeah, I think, one of those. It's on the street there. It's over in that area.
Yeah.
And Wayne Wolford, Lisa Sapagianis, Mac McWhorter, who I did not know before I interviewed everybody, and Justin Tanner, interviewed him, and I don't think I'm.
Well, we can always bring up some other
Yeah,
names.
and Stacey Harvey.
Yeah.
You can't forget him.
Yeah. So what brought you, it looks like you've got a cross section of people, of ideas. Is that kind of what you were going for?
Yes, I wanted to get people's points of view that where normally you might not be in conversation or hear those people. And I think in today's world, it's hard in terms of whatever form of media you're listening to or reading or watching. You don't always hear everybody's full point of view. And I think that we often label people and misrepresent certain people. So I wanted, whatever the political spectrum, philosophical, sociological, I wanted to reach as much. And I think I looked a little bit at some of the demographics of the city, and I don't think I actually maybe hit that on the mark, but I will say this: I had hoped to interview more women, but
Well,
I
as you
just ran out of
said,
time.
yeah, there's only so much time, and you may want to do a part 2 in 2024 or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, when you get into scheduling interviews with 12 different people on all the different topics, all that is very time consuming. So out of all the people that you interviewed, without giving away too many spoilers, what interview surprised you the most, and in what way did it surprise you?
Well, you may not like this answer, but it wasn't one interview. What became very clear to me was that everybody's pretty much on the same wavelength. And, growing up in McMinnville, you always hear about what a great place it is to raise a family. And as a kid, you think you're getting bored because you're in a small town or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the natural beauty, the community, the way people are connected, the McMinnville, the people I talk to see the town as a very giving town, very supportive of each other. when people need things and so forth. But I was struck by that, the commonality, the same wavelength, wanting the same things, and the way that really moved me was that they're all very likable people.
Yeah. Well, you hear that a lot whenever people do. I interviewed a doctor a few weeks ago that had moved his family here from New York, and he was very struck. That was during the pandemic. The people he met, the beauty, of course, but the people really rang resonated with him. And I guess that is our commonality. We are nice people here for the most part.
People are struck by how people will say hello to you and things.
Yeah.
And you don't get that in New York or in Boston where I live. It's a little different.
Yes, and that may be what some people are looking for as far as going out. Hello, neighbor. How are you today? Somebody to check on you. That kind of thing really is important, especially as we get older. We often our families are moving and spreading out and things like that. And as we get older, we need people to connect with for sure. So let's talk about, I guess, last week's article started with an introduction of each person. And this week cuts to, I say unpleasant question of what divides us as a city and a community. Did you find that each one had a different perspective on what is causing the division?
Well, I think some people were more in depth in their answers and in their reasons than others. I'm not going to put words in their mouths, but to me, I think historically, as a country, as a town, we have always been a little bit divided on the issues. And I think that, for instance, as part of our history, slavery, Presidents George Washington, Andrew Jackson, even James Polk, Tennesseans, owned slaves, and people were on both sides of the fence on that and using Scripture to reinforce their point of view. And I think you fast forward to today, I think some issues are more national in nature, that people are really somewhat polarized on, but when you come local, I sort of got to the point where that really shakes down, and I think people are reinforcing themselves on their values, some certain perspectives, and using Scripture, or if they're outside, more secular in nature, they're using things and they're dug in a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed the last election. Traditionally, my take was sort of that things happened on a national level, but on a local level, it didn't. We weren't as passionate about things. We weren't as divided on a local level, but it seems like that has changed. The national feelings and thoughts are penetrating the local community here. It seems like more than what they used to.
Well, I'm old enough to remember when people called themselves Democrats, and were proud of that.
Right.
Well, the majority in McMinnville are Republicans now, and I think party affiliation has become somehow more divisive, although I remember very vividly political debates among my parents or other people when I was growing up. But you would find a way to sort of resolve those and work together in some shape or form, maybe, but not always. Not trying to be too idealistic or revisionist. But I think that today there is a movement. I think it's a very strong grassroots movement in McMinnville of Republicans wanting to control, have their voice fully represented. And if you were involved in government or politics, you realize I need all the aldermen. I want the mayor, and I want the school board and the commissioners. And I've heard a lot of people say you can't get elected if you're a Democrat in McMinnville anymore. So if you look at that over time, how do we get there and why? There's a number of factors. And I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but it's just a political reality.
It is. And as you said, I'm kind of looking at it like, I don't know, I'm in my 50s now and came back to McMinnville and didn't really hear, I guess, or see probably evidence of division until recently. But as we know, this country has gone through things like this before. We've been through the 50s and 60s and things. And
I remember civil rights marches and integration of schools. But I will say that there are other issues that the people I interviewed voiced, and it's it can be social standing, economic differences, and I think a lot of people feel like they're not involved in the process. I mean, in terms of like town hall meetings or actually being able to go to the meetings and interact and have a voice in how decisions are made. And I think that leads, as Matt McWhorter said, to some mistrust. And I think Jimmy Haley also said that, he thinks that the art of compromise and finding that common ground is how you really govern and take care of people. And if you're clashing more than resolving, which I'm not saying we are,
right,
but it seems to be a different political landscape and climate right now.
Did any of your interviews kind of propose concrete solutions or for some of these?
There's a lot of that. This is something I'm posting online weekly, and we go to next week about if you were mayor of McMinnville and had a magic wand, what 3 things would you change? What do you see in the future of McMinnville? What do you think unites us? And I think people, and we look at education, people are offering concrete things that they think would make a difference. And I don't think they're complaining. They're just saying, I like to see this and I like to see that.
Yeah.
And then you get into the deep weeds of looking at a city budget and trying to figure out, well, how do we do those changes and how do we make that happen?
Right. A lot of times we tend to oversimplify or think it's so easy, and these people all have budget constrictions to work within. They have things that have probably may take precedence over certain agendas and things like that. So whether it's sidewalks or whatever, everybody's opinionated on all of those things.
Well, I heard a lot of comments, but people want more sidewalks. And for safety reasons.
Yes. Well, we have a lot of people walking these days and riding bikes and things.
Right.
And they're going, we work here on Smithville Highway. It's not leisure walking through here. They're going to work. They're going to school, places like that. So your leisure walking, that's always great too. We have some nice facilities for that, but sidewalks are a safety issue.
Well, I think going to 3-Star Mall, especially if the county takes that over, you're going to have to look at putting sidewalks out there from downtown. And Tony Lawrence over at by
yes, very affected
There's a
by
lot
those.
of apartments over there, and people are walking, and they're even doing this at night, and it gets dangerous. And I think on another thing in terms of like just greenways and like you bike paths and places where people can walk are things that help us appreciate the nature here, and it's part of what draws people to our community is the natural beauty. And if you have more of those, and everybody needs to give Dr. Wally Bigby a big hand for spearheading a lot of that.
Oh,
and the city's done a good job of doing that, but I think there's some people that want to see more. Yeah,
as I head home and I go through the Walmart intersection, I generally kind of hold my breath and say a little prayer for those people going to Walmart on feet and with strollers and things like that.
You almost need one of those over.
Yes, that's
it goes over a bridge.
Crossed my mind.
Bridge.
yeah, because it's that busy through there. It is,
Yeah.
and so do you think people generally want to find common ground, or do they enjoy kind of the division, or people kind of wanting to come together and read about more or see how we're more alike than different?
Everybody I talk to. I believe wants the greatest good for the greatest number of people in McMinnville. I think where you come up in terms of like the division is how do we do that? And that's where the great debate is. But I think a lot of people have given themselves tremendously to making McMinnville a better place and making contributions. And I think that's what's foremost on the people that I talk to's minds.
Well, good.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to take 12 people from all different walks of life, all different parts of the county and different areas, and see that they kind of, like you said, we have more in common than what we realize. So did the piece, I guess, you've done all the interviews and stuff, did it give you hope for the community and the country?
I'm not sure. I'm not qualified to speak on the country, but in terms of McMinnville, my hope is that I can put together a town hall meeting where there would be like a live interactive discussion, and I am idealistic and hopeful that there's a young Abraham Lincoln in our midst that will come lead us in this struggle and shine a light on a path where that people can actually debate these things and come out agreeing that, yeah, here's how we're going to do it, and we don't have to label each other and demean each other when we're talking about it. So I think there's a lot of leaders and people who are involved in McMinnville doing things that want to see positive outcomes.
I know we've got a young group of 20 and 30-something-year-olds, and I see a lot of positive things coming out. They're working hard. They're going out and contributing to the community and really taking the torch, I guess, that's being passed to them from those that have led the community in the way that they have, and that's very nice to see.
Yeah, it is. I mean, a lot of people say that, of course, the leaders of tomorrow are in our youth, and you hope that McMinnville, through education and recreation and other things, providing proper opportunities for young people to grow up here, and hopefully, if they go away to school, to return here and raise their families and help McMinnville be a good place for everybody.
Well, Brad, tell us about where we can find the BD newsletter and this introspection on McMinnville by McMinnvillians. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's a website. Can I hold this up?
Yes, you sure can.
I don't know if I can get that in there, but it's got a QR code, but it's very simple. It's BD Newsletter.news. And there's a Facebook page, but wish people would go there and read it, and if they like it, then share it with people. It's something that we're just doing, making available online, and it's free, and I'm hoping that people will read it and share it if they appreciate what they're reading.
And so once a week, you're going to be coming out, I guess, with the next question that you've asked. And there's a series of, how many questions did you do? 12?
Well, I did whatever question, but the articles will be, I can give you a rundown real quick, but the next article will be, what do you think when you reflect on McMinnville's future? And then we're going to look at what would you change in McMinnville. And then the next week, do you agree with the direction and quality of McMinnville's public school system? And I'm going to say that's going to be the one that gets the most attention. And then we ask if McMinnville's doing enough for people who are economically disadvantaged, and what unites us in McMinnville. And then I will release the transcripts of each interview in its entirety.
Good. Those are some very interesting things, and things that affect all of us, from school system to the local economy and things like that. So that's going to be interesting to read. Each week we can look forward to the next question.
Yeah. Well, let's hope I can get some eyes on it, but I really appreciate this opportunity to let people know about it, and I appreciate you taking the time to interview me.
You're welcome, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll tell our audience thank you for joining us today, and we hope you found this show very helpful and informative, and we invite you to come back next week for more Table Talk.